Hey everybody, welcome. If you're here now, you're a little bit early. And in my world, if you're not early, you're late. So what I want to do is make the most of this time together. So if you're here early and you didn't have the opportunity to pose a question via email or Facebook, then please use the chat box now. If you're watching this live, if you're watching this via recording, that won't be available to you, but you're welcome to email me at aaron@ecfitstrength.com, and I'll be happy to deal with your question specifically and personally either this weekend or sometime after you ask the question. So happy to just kind of put those questions that come in the next 5 minutes in the queue for our time together today. I'm going to plan on about an hour. If we get on a roll, we might go a little bit longer, but my goal is to really always respect your time and make sure that we cover a lot of great topics and make sure that you find this time valuable. So let's take the next, 3 or 4 minutes to just kind of see if anything comes in the chat box. But again, welcome. It's Friday afternoon in Boulder, Colorado. It's beautiful. It's finally summer here. So I'm watching to see if anyone's going to throw up anything in the chat box or even just say good morning, say hi. And there we have Dr. Pat Helma. Is that you, Doc Helma? You there?
I am. How are you?
Right on. It's good. Okay, I'm going to try and figure out how to make myself big here.
Let's see if I can rename myself.
I'm going to pin myself, but I'm definitely going to be introducing you. I'm going to put you over here. I love these webinars because I can move people around.
I know, right?
I'm so glad you made it.
Me too. This is going to be exciting.
Yeah, it is. So everybody can hear us talking right now, Pat.
Okay.
So we've got about 7 people coming, and I was just letting people know that in my world, if you're not early, you're late. And I've got a whole list of questions that I'm going to answer. And if they want to ask any questions now, they're welcome to do that if they're watching us live. And if they're watching us via recording, they're going to send me an email at aaron@ecfitstrength.com. Linda, nice to meet you. Linda, where are you coming in from? What part of the world? Because I know that I meant to actually do this webinar a little bit earlier so that the folks in the UK, we've got a lot of people in the UK who come to our stuff. So there we go, Rhode Island. Nice, beautiful evening out there, I hope. It's such an exciting time of the year when we transition from spring into summer. And if you're living somewhere that is just weather challenged right now, just know that in Boulder, Colorado, in the last 3 weeks, we have had so much snow and rain and everything. Hi, Tanya. No earlier. I know everybody on Sydney and New Zealand and the likes are definitely happy right now. Yay, on the trainer. Good job. So I'm going to start right on time. So we are going to start the topics and the information right at 4 o'clock my time. So we're coming up on that quite quickly. And then I'm just going to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about who I am, the origination of ECFIT and where it came from, who some of our success stories include, and why maybe what we're saying or the information that we're bringing might be really relevant and interesting to you. Hi, Shelby. Nice to meet you. Okay, yeah, let me see here, Shelby, because I tried to get everybody's questions. And Shelby, do me a favor, submit your question right now so that I can deal with it. And I didn't get to all of them. Okay, perfect. Thank you, because I want to make sure. Good morning, Janet, or afternoon. I want to make sure I get to everybody's questions, or as best I can. All right. Just going to tilt that up just a little bit. You can tell I'm in my downstairs studio, ECFIT Studios, just created here for COVID during the pandemic. And this is where we do our Monday morning live workouts here in my home gym. My name's Erin. I'm from Boulder, Colorado, but I was born and raised in Abbotsford, British Columbia. So we have managed to attract a lot of Canadians into our strength world. At one time, I was Paula Finley's strength coach. I saw her almost every day when she lived in Boulder. And then we transitioned to more of an online workout. And that actually was, being able to help Paula when she left Boulder was a big part of my transition into online and emailing and photography and video and that kind of stuff with endurance athletes. So Paula Finley, definitely one of my good friends, one of my athletes. She's featured in a lot of my online stuff, and we're super proud of how she has just continued onward. So born and raised in Canada, living in Boulder, Colorado. I own a beautiful big health club here in Boulder named Rally Sport, where a lot of professional athletes train, but a lot of normal everyday people just like me and you train as well. So Rally Sport has been around a long time. And I think the reason we have been around a long time is because we value all levels of human performance. I've got clients in their 80s and 90s. I train almost an equal distribution of men and women. I just really feel that professional athletes can tell us beautiful stories of performance, but in many ways, a lot of what they do, we should not try to impersonate, because the biggest difference between an age group athlete who has a very busy life, goes to work every single day, and a professional athlete who goes to work every day, swim, bike, run, or cycling or running, but then they go home and take a nap. And so their ability to recover and take time to recover is just as much an important part of their job as it is to train hard and train well and in balance and maintain a really healthy system. So professional stories are valuable, and I have a few of them, but we want to adapt a lot of this information to you personally, to how you can utilize it. So I'm going to aim this time together here today, this hour, mostly to those of us who have jobs, who have busy lives, who might be a little bit older. And even if some of you have been professional level athletes in your younger years, as we get a little bit older, what are some of the things that we should really pay attention to? So Erin Carson, I've been a certified strength and conditioning specialist with the NSCA since 1989. I am much older than I look. So I have been a strength and conditioning coach for a long time, but I am a lifelong student. And there is no one in my industry who knows and has the right answer to everything. The most of us that are worth listening to will acknowledge that there are people way smarter than who bring stories to us and science to us and data to us that we can pull apart and we can question as professionals, and we can come up with really good anecdotal ideas and understandings of performance, human performance, not just professional performance. So from here on in, I'm really talking to us. I'm talking to you about your performance, not necessarily to the pros. Let's see, I've been a Titleist Performance Institute fitness specialist for 15 years. So I do love golf. I love other sports other than swim, bike, run. I will speak a lot to triathlon today, but if you do enjoy your bike, if you do enjoy a nice jog, if you do enjoy hiking or skiing, most of this stuff will be very relevant across sports. So ECFIT was really created when I started training Timothy O'Donnell and Marinda Carfrae. And those of you who don't know who they are prolific triathletes. Kona champion, 3-time champion with Marinda Carfrae, Australian athlete, a very good friend of mine. I've been their strength coach for 10 years now. So that has been, when I started training them, we started putting in some strategies in the weight room that other athletes weren't doing 10 years ago. And we've been able to keep them super healthy for 10 years, minus bike crashes or twisted ankles off of trail running and that kind of thing. But everything, no journey is perfect, right? So we haven't had injuries from repetitive motion exercises with Tim Arini. I've also coached Flora Duffy through her world championship years. I no longer coach her anymore, but I'm super proud of the work I did with Flora Duffy. She's a world champion Xterra athlete, as well as competing in the Olympic Games for Bermuda. Taylor Knibb is probably my most exciting athlete right now. Taylor just qualified for the US women's triathlon team for the Tokyo Games. And she just had a stellar performance 3 weeks ago in Yokohama. So we're going to spend the next few weeks getting her ready to compete in Tokyo and hopefully win a medal. Ruth Winder is one of my athletes, and so is her mom. And I love training families. But Ruth is our U.S. National Women's Cycling Road Champion, and also will be hopefully competing in Tokyo. They have not named the team yet, but we're really counting on seeing Ruth in Tokyo. Sepp Kuss is he's a cyclist, a UCI cyclist for Team Jumbo Visma, and Sepp and I do work together when he's in Boulder, but he's in good hands when he's in Europe. So I'm super stoked to be able to work with world-class athletes, but I also have an 83-year-old client who skied 45 times this year after surviving being taken out by a snowboarder 4 years ago. And even that year, we were able to get him, after 4 broken ribs, collapsed lung, we were able to get him back into form. So there's always these journeys that go on and on and on and on and on. And then I've got tons of age groupers and just people just like me, people over 50, who are they just want to be amazing for the next half of their life. So that's really where we're going to start talking today. So a few of my really great strategic alliances have been with some of the smartest people that I know. One of them, a lot of you guys that are here today are fans of Dr. Stacy Sims. Dr. Stacy Sims and I have become friends. She's been to my club in Boulder. She is just so smart and so generous with the knowledge that she has about women are not small men and how we need to include LHS, lifting heavy stuff, or as we say sometimes in feisty world, lifting heavy shit. So we talk a lot about lifting heavy stuff with Dr. Sims' audience, as well as older women and men. And I don't say take that lightly. Men should be lifting heavy shit as well. So guys, we're going to include you in this conversation. I also want to say that a big strategic alliance of mine is foundation training and Dr. Eric Goodman. I am so lucky to have a partner in crime in my company, ECFIT, which was built for the endurance community, with Dr. Pat Helma. So he's actually on the call today. We'll bring him in to answer any questions when it comes to the time. But I want him to talk a little bit more about foundation training and why both he and I see it as such a valuable tool, not only in the aging process, but also in performance. All of our athletes and clients adhere to a practice of foundation training. And I'm going to kind of hand over the reins to Doc Helma to kind of take us through what foundation training is about and why you should include it in some of your training, or at least consider including it. So Dr. Pat Helma, you'll meet him in just a little bit. So I want to dive into some questions, but I'm just going to take a quick second here because Shelby is on the call and she's live. So I'm actually going to just go ahead and answer her question. And her question is, would I get better results from lifting heavy stuff by splitting up body parts across different days? Okay, so when we have to assess what the goal is. So I'm going to come back to that question, Shelby, in just a second. Is the goal, and this is where, I wish Stacy was on the call as well, because I think she'd agree with me. Is the goal to live your best life and perform at a physical premium, or is the goal to lift the heaviest weights you can possibly lift? I'm going to say that I'm skewing a little bit more towards the goal is really to be performing and feeling within yourself that you're at your best. So to optimize what's happening, splitting up body parts across different days is very bodybuilder. So if you're finding that lifting heavy stuff burns me out and I actually lose my cut muscle definition and totally bulky instead, my body feels thick, heavy, and slow. I tend to get far greater benefits from lifting lighter weights, body weight exercises, and I don't feel spent and hungry all day afterwards. Typically, if I lift heavy weights and do a full body workout, and maybe that's too much for me at 51. You know, the biggest thing is we have 3 key body types. We've identified an ectomorph, a mesomorph, and an endomorph. You have to be able to identify who you are and what your goal is. I am an ecto/mesomorph. I am able to develop muscle, not easily. I'm generally pretty skinny and I have never really been challenged with weight gain. So an ectomorph is skinny and would have a hard time putting on muscle mass. A mesomorph would have pretty easy opportunity to build muscle. And so Shelby, it sounds to me, and this is without seeing you in person, but I would say that if you are a 51-year-old female and you feel bulky and thick from lifting heavy stuff, then I wouldn't suggest that at this juncture of your life, that is something you should be doing. It doesn't make you feel good. So I would say go with what makes you feel good right now. There's a few different ways to raise the bar and intensity in the weight room. There's agility exercises. There's power exercises. So even just moving things very quickly, like the snatch, a single arm snatch, I have never taught one person a double arm overhead snatch. That is such a complex movement that it scares the crap out of me. I have massive respect for people who do it, but I find it to be really, really risky. So I would say any kind of fast moving stuff, Shelby, agility movements, high intensity interval training, whether it's the treadmill or whether it's kind of moving load in an intense, safe way. We could come up with a strategy that would work better for you than a bunch of heavy deadlifts or maybe heavy back squats. I also don't back squat any of my athletes. I find it incredibly risky, and most people are posturally challenged, especially runners, cyclists, triathletes in general. I spend enough time trying to fix and help them breathe better and stand taller than I want to put them under load and put them at risk. So when you feel, Anna will be able to answer that. You can access the recording afterwards. I'll put it up on my website as well as on my Facebook page. So I think that if things don't make you feel good, but a doctor is telling you to do it, like Dr. Stacy Sims, she says lift heavy stuff. 51 is also pretty early in the menopause stage and also pretty early in or potentially perimenopause. So working slowly into some lifting heavy stuff, you could be at the top. Just because you're turning 50 doesn't mean you're all of a sudden supposed to change everything, because now we're getting old. So let's talk more about that, but hopefully I answered your question. So the first thing I really want to talk about is strength training for the non-athlete, the people who don't identify as a swim, bike, runner, or a triathlete, or a rower, or a climber. They just want to feel better, and they want to maintain this beautiful, young, youthful energy that they might possess now. So they might be a little bit fearful, and they know that they need to lift weights to stay strong. First and foremost, I love a lot of what Stacy does, but I think one of her best quotes was, if you move on purpose, you are an athlete. So even if you don't like the depiction of being an athlete, If you move on purpose, you're an athlete. So that being said, if you don't want to lift heavy stuff, this was one of our questions. When women don't identify as athletes, and this is from Karen, we need them to understand the importance of developing bone density, fall resiliency, balance, and mobility. All of those things are better if you are stronger. So the first thing we need to maintain is postural integrity, the ability to hold our shoulders back, the ability to keep our hips open, the ability to feel and manipulate our feet. Once we establish what that might look like, then we have to strengthen it. So for Karen and her ladies, we're going to make sure, and we could, if we just kept their posture strong the entire time and they never lifted heavy stuff, but they were posturally strong, their lower bodies were strong enough to hold them on single leg stances, I think we might be able to peak their motivation a little bit higher to maintain lower body strength and postural integrity. And that takes traditional strength training, and it takes additional load so that we can get that positive tissue adaptation to stay strong. We want to get our athletes or our non-athletes to believe that doing a little bit of work is okay, and it's going to help you live a better life. So non-athletes, you are athletes now, okay? We now know what lifting heavy stuff is. When I approached Dr. Sims to talk about developing a strength program for her and her program and her audience, my biggest concern was there needs to be a journey. And this is true for any of us. There has to be a journey. You don't just wake up one day and say, I want to do an Ironman, so you just start doing an Ironman. You wake up one day and the first thing you do is you go for a walk. And then you start to run, or you start to jog, and then you start to run, and then you start to do sprint intervals, and then you start to do uphill sprint intervals. And there's your journey to becoming an Ironman runner, or a half Ironman runner, or running a 10K. It's the exact same thing with lifting weights. There are things and there are days that need to be easy so that your tissue can adapt and become used to being under load. So there are days that you should lift lighter weights. There are days that you shouldn't lift heavy weights. It's too stressful for your body. You cannot recover from those days. So let's say I got off a flight from Hawaii. I had flown overnight. I had no energy, but I wanted to go lift weights. I should still be able to go lift some moderate or light weights and have a strategy and have a program that'll give me that, so that maybe Thursday or Friday, when I'm rested up and I'm in a much better energy state, that I can go and attempt things that are maybe a little bit riskier, that are heavier, that I know my body will then be in a position to adapt to. So lifting heavy stuff is super important, because human growth hormone is developed when we sleep, when our body was stressed. So human growth hormone comes into the game after a day when we've stressed our bodies. It comes in and it fixes and produces a really good, strong hormonal state. Same thing that happens with testosterone. When we lift heavy things and we do it in a safe and progressive, a safe and progressive manner, our testosterone numbers and our hormone balance starts to become in a better light for our everyday living. So why we want to lift heavy stuff? An increase in human growth hormone, an increase in a more balanced state of our hormones. And that is a result of lifting heavy stuff in a really progressive way. So a lot of questions around how do I incorporate this into my week, into my month, and into my year. So there is, for women first, I'm going to talk about the girls first. If you still have a menstrual cycle, you have a 4-week cycle. On day 1, that's the day that your period starts, you're superwoman. Everything's good for those first 3 weeks. And those 3 weeks, Dr. Sims will advocate for a build week 1, build week 2, and then perhaps a back week. Now, a back week is not a rest week, it's a back week. So if build week 1, we hit a certain level of load, build week 2, we hit a little bit more load, the back week just needs to come back a little bit. It means you're gonna stay lifting, you're gonna stay on schedule, but you're gonna back off a little bit of the load. So build week 1, build week 2, then a back week. Still training, but training a little bit less. Week 4 of your cycle is when you're in that lower state of hormones. And at that stage, that should be and can be an easy week. So we go build week 1, build week 2, back week, maybe rest week or easy week. Everybody's going to be a little bit different on that. But I've seen people say, this is my movie week. This is when I go to the movies. This is when I hang out with friends and do book club, is in that week before your menstrual cycle starts again. And we start day 1 again. So for the guys, anybody over the age of 40, 20-year-olds to 30-year-olds in the 30s typically have a very nice functional recovery pattern. So for most of my guys, I've got some young ones, but the young ones, mostly I follow their training schedule for swim, bike, run, because that's why they're with me, because I'm their strength coach for sport. So we'll talk about that specifically. But for most of you guys who are over 40, a 2-week build and 1 week back, you don't need the easy week necessarily, unless you just might need the easy week and you want a movie week as well. So it will only serve you if you're hitting your intensities correctly. It will only serve you to allow adaptation and recovery. And that seems to be the scariest thing for people, is this willingness to have a movie week or a friend week or a lover week or whatever the heck it is. But that week is a week that you just don't train so much. You drop it way back. Both men and women will benefit from that. The older we get, the more valuable that easy week or that movie week really, really is. So weekly, I like to see with most of my, if you are training, so there's 2 groups of people. Let's put yourself in a bucket. If you're training for any kind of race, any kind of 5K or 10K or triathlon or cycling or event that you have a swim, bike, run calendar schedule, then we want to follow that schedule. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So you're in that bucket. If you are just living a happy life and you don't care how fast you run, you just want to be amazing as you can be, then what I'd like to see is in week 1, I'd like to see 1 heavy session, 2 moderate sessions. In week 2, which is our build week, I would like to see 2 heavy sessions and 1 lighter session. So we're still taking a target of 3 strength sessions a week. Week 1, we get 1 heavy session. Week 2, we get 2 heavy sessions. And then on our back week, we go back to 1 heavy session and 2 moderate sessions. So in ECFIT speak, if you were one of my athletes and you were in my app program or maybe part of my premium program, we would do launch, climb. Week 2, we would go launch, climb. And in week 3, we would go launch, climb, launch. And so if you are as part of my world, that's how I describe workouts. The cruise sessions are coming this fall. I'm so excited. Those are going to be high intensity HIIT sessions, kettlebell sessions, heavy sessions, a little bit more advanced skill development. So we go launch, climb, cruise. It's like flying on an airplane. And then we have a bunch of programs called pre-flight, which is designed to set your body up for success. So monthly, We talked about that. Build week 1, build week 2, back week, easy week. Annual. This is where it gets really fun. 3 big peaks a year. That's it. 3 times a year. And some athletes who are very busy doing a lot of other things, skiing like crazy, not sleeping because they travel for work, doing Ironman stuff, they will probably only have 2 big peaks a year. That means you're not lifting 300 pounds on Monday, week 2, 350, week 3, 250, and then you come back. You're really you're setting your sights on a peak for maybe January and February, build month, and then March is a peak month. We are going for the heaviest stuff you can lift in March. And then when we come back, we start again, April. So we're going to leave that heavy stuff that we did in March on the shelf. We know we're capable of doing that. And then in April, we're going to kind of start the cycle again. And this beautiful recovery comes into your body. So I just released Stacy's series 2, and I've gotten a little bit of feedback that it's too easy. Well, I just want to encourage you to embrace the easy and know that it will build again to another peak. So I look at life, because I'm a business person a little bit as well, in quarters. My important quarters are going to be March, because March sets me up for a very good summer. I want to see some of my strongest lifting happening in March, because that's going to set me up to bike and run really well all summer. My second peak might be towards the end of the summer, because I like to go into Thanksgiving and into the fall into the best shape I can possibly be. And that's been my annual plan for many, many years, and it has served me really, really well. So I want you to think about having a weekly understanding of launch, climb, or launch, climb, or something like that, or moderate, heavy. Then I want you to have a monthly plan, build week 1, build week 2, back week, easy week, or build 1, build 2, back week, build 1. So if you don't need that easy week, you don't have to take it. But I also want you to have that annual understanding of, you don't need to just, it doesn't go into this infinite need to get everything heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. And then until you finally fail, or you're so sore, or you're sick, or you're injured that you can't do it again in the next cycle. So that's important, this annual plan. It's funny, when I was setting up my annual plan, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be lifting some really good heavy stuff at the end of March, I probably will have accompanied that with getting into some really good physical condition as well. Maybe I should go to Hawaii in April, because I'm going to be looking pretty good. So it kind of can go along with some physical goals and hold you accountable for some really good nutritional strategies, and accompanying the lifting strategies. Plan a trip to Hawaii at the end of your build week. Okay, scheduling with swim, bike, run. I'm going to bring my board in a little bit closer. My staff always worries a little bit when I bring my board out, but let's just put it right here. And then I'll get my pen. This is a big question. So even if you're a coach, I want you to really contemplate for your athletes the best way for their week to lay out. The best way for their week to lay out. We're going to call this day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. And I also put on 8, 9, and 10. As an older athlete, and I'm competitive, I'm not a participant, I'm a competitor. I love racing, but I like winning. So if I'm going to go put my toe on the line and put myself out there and try to do, I'm going to do as well as I possibly can. And I want to see how I measure up. So for me, as I got a little bit older, a 7-day cycle wasn't enough recovery for me. So I actually switched to an 8-day cycle, or a 10-day cycle, excuse me. So on a build week 1, it was actually build week 1 was 10 days. Build week 2 was another 10 days. So where do you put in your strength training with a running program or a cycling program or a swimming program? I didn't put sports in here, but I want you to know that every time you hit day one, that for us in ECFIT, and I hope some of you who don't know me, you're here for your first time, you'll start joining our Facebook group. We do a workout every single Monday morning. We consider that day one is an easy or recovery day. So Mondays are not scary. They're easy. They're uplifting. You leave that in a very anabolic, built up state. We do lift weights sometimes on that day. And if we do lift them, we will typically lift something a little bit heavy. I will use moderate loads sometimes for mobility movements. But Monday is typically an easy or recovery day, and the weights should be according to that. We're going to focus on mobility, movement. We're going to focus on some foundation training, and I'm going to let Doc Helma in on the game here just shortly. So Doc, get ready. And then I'm also going to focus on just making sure that my body is in very, very good balance. And if those of you, again, that do have my app, and I will put free stuff up on the app that will be pre-flight. Anything that you see is categorized as pre-flight is going to set you up really well for a training session or a race or anything like that. So it's all about bringing balance and mobility and great movement and being able to access the strength that you have. Tuesday is a hard day. This is an interval day in sport. So it might be run intervals, it might be cycling intervals. If you've got a Peloton bike, you want to hit the hardest class you can on Tuesday, and that's a really good day to lift some heavy stuff. That's a really good day to do some HIIT training, which is interval training. You know, that's the other thing too. People are a little confused around, if I go to the track and do 8 by 400 meters or 10 by 200 meters, or I go run up a hill 10 by 10 seconds up a hill, that is in fact high intensity interval training. And so even though it's intervals, that is your HIIT training for the day. You want to make sure if you've got a good coach, you're actually being monitored to make sure that your recovery is not too long for those sessions. But that is the perfect day to lift some heavy stuff. The second, day 3, and this is something that I learned from Dr. Sims, most of us can handle 2 hard days in a row. So we actually have Tuesday and Wednesday as hard days. And so that can be another interval day, maybe not as long, definitely, maybe this one you did 30-second intervals, maybe this one you're going to do 3-minuters. So the intensity is just a little bit different, but we can handle 2 days like that. So to the question that we took early from, did I say Shelby? Yeah, from Shelby, we might be actually able to do a split lift day and maybe not just do lower body, but maybe do hamstrings, back, and shoulders on Tuesday, and then do quads and chest and biceps or some kind of split. And I just pulled those off the top of my head. I actually don't program like that, but being able to do a split routine here might be really good. I would actually probably do a heavy pull day on Tuesday and a heavy push day on Wednesday. So I kind of think about push, pull, lunge, push, pull, legs, that kind of stuff. So you could do, my group for the most part will do a climb session on Tuesdays and a launch session on Wednesdays. And then Thursdays, we have an easier day. And this is where we use foundation training. We want to reset our body from these 3 days. We want to enhance our breathing. We want to decompress our spine. So I'm not going to touch foundation training right now. I'm going to come back to that as soon as I finish out the week. If you're a little bit older, you're going to probably go hard, easy. If you're pretty athletic and you're still on top of your game, you're probably going to go hard, moderate. So you can actually, on this day, you could do a foundation training, you could do a lower weight workout, a lighter session if you wanted to get into the gym, but I would actually want to take that day off. Friday, we want to have an easy day or an off day. Saturday or Sunday, we want to lift heavy stuff again. Saturday being usually a brick day, a short, hard session followed by maybe 2 sports, or Sunday, nice long hike, long bike ride, maybe a long run. So if you want to keep asking that question or just take a screenshot of that, you can. There's obviously lots of different philosophies and thought processes on how to lay out a training week. But with my triathlon, usually Monday, I do a 30-minute shakeout run, that's it, or an easy swim. And I'll do an easy recovery day in the gym. Tuesday is definitely a run interval as well as a lifting day. Wednesday is usually my cycling interval and as well as a heavy lifting day. Thursday is typically an easy run day and an afternoon session, whether it's cycling or swimming. And I also do foundation training on Thursdays. Friday is an easy day. Maybe it's an off day. Sometimes I rest completely on that day. Sometimes I might do upper body only in the gym just to feel good and reset my posture. Saturday is typically a brick day, cycling and running. And Sunday is just a long either bike ride or run. And that's where my lifting kind of comes in with that. So let's take a second. Let's get me off the screen here for a second. And let's get Doc Helma in to talk about foundation training and some of the key reasons why we think people should be absolutely including foundation training as part of their workout.
Hey, Aaron, how are you?
Hey, we want to see your face, Doc, because right now you do look a lot like you're.
I know. It says I can't start the video
Avatar.
because the host has stopped it. So you got to start my video.
I got to start your video. Oh, I hate when I do this.
I know, right?
Okay, well, keep you talk and I'll work on that.
Very good. That's okay. You don't really need to see my face. It's all good.
Oh, no, you're.
So I got involved with foundation training back in 2013 because I thought it was an extremely useful tool for my patients to help them stay out of my office. To me, healthcare is giving things for people to do to keep them well. And I really love working with Erin because she really gets that. And it's not always all about training so hard and really trying to beat yourself up and, and pushing. It's pushing hard to a goal, but it's making you extremely resilient, which is really cool. And when you look at the definition of resilient, it's the ability to recover quickly from difficult conditions. So that's what we're trying to do, whether you want to go on a hike, whether you want to do a triathlon or things like that. So foundation training is a great complement for just about anything else that you do because it helps balance the body. As a chiropractor, I was getting frustrated. It was like, why do I have to keep fixing the same things on the same people over and over again? Why can't I, here I am.
There you are.
There you go. So why can't I fix people for good? And it's because our bodies kind of create imbalances. And when the body gets imbalanced, the chance for injury becomes much, much greater. So what we're trying to do is decrease the chance of injury or decrease the chance of having problems. And it's with proper training and it's with foundation training. Foundation training is probably the best thing that I found as a complement to other types of training because it helps balance the body and it gives you an extreme awareness of your body and where it's at in space, which I think is extremely important. And it gives you a really powerful tool that you can use on your own to help keep yourself well, which I think is one of the coolest things. So I really love working with Erin and incorporating all this and trying to give all you guys things that you can do to help with your training and help meet your goals. And I just think foundation training is just a great part of that. So.
Thanks, Doc Helma.
See ya.
Awesome. Okay, I'm coming back. Okay, so with Doc Helma, not only do I have a wonderful partner because he is just an amazing friend and just an overall great guy. But I have an incredible mentor and brain power on a whole nother layer. One of the most important things to me as a strength coach has always been to stay in my lane and don't pretend that I know things on the level that I don't know. So I try to surround myself with super smart people who usually have a doctor in front of them. So Dr. Helma is somebody that we talk about any nerve issues, we talk about shooting pain. Typically our answer between Doc Helma and I is going to be to find a great practitioner in your area and encourage you to find somebody that can truly help you, because the internet isn't a great way to find a bunch of information. So Doc Helma is not only just a great guy, but he also helps us a lot with some of our more challenging questions. So I want to get to some of these Q&As here. So now that we know how to lay out the week, Gwen asked, coming back from injury with the intent of lifting heavy shit, how do we ensure that the form is good to ensure not hurting ourselves further? That is a great question, because skill development and the ability to get under load comes with a progressive program. If you are questioning whether or not you should lift something, I don't know, I'm kind of worried about this, then I would say don't lift it. You need to be able to stabilize your spine, hold posture, have a beautiful hip hinge to be able to get under any kind of load. If you have a back issue, if you have a hamstring issue, if you have a past shoulder issue or something that makes you nervous, then you need to be in the hands of a very, very good professional. It doesn't mean you need to have them in person. It doesn't mean you need to pay them every time like a personal trainer. That can get very expensive. But it does mean it might be worth having somebody look at your spine angle. I'm always happy to do that. I do a ton of Zoom consultations to help people make sure that they're in good form. So if you have bad form, but you don't have a lot of weight, your chances of getting injured are much, much less. So you want to develop a routine, get going with something with someone you trust, and then start to establish your timeline of that annual program. I want to be as strong as I can be at the end of March. So how am I going to get there and create that plan? So you want to have people in your life who you trust. I'm happy to be that. That's why we've created this program. What are the most appropriate lifts to do heavy? Does it matter if you're a runner or a triathlete? That is such a great question because it depends. I am a big fan. I've got a hex bar here in my house. I own a gym, but I still have a hex bar at my house. That hex bar setup right there was less than $200. So I've got some bumper plates to get it up off the ground just a little bit, and I've got a hex bar set up. Those of you that have access to Amazon or a good fitness supply store, that to me is the safest way to deadlift. Because what it does is it gives you the load through your skeleton. You're going to lift through your knees, through your hips, and you don't have to go onto a bar, which puts the load in front of you. When the load is in front of you, the back of you is what lights up. So that's why sometimes awkward positions, like if you just lift up a baby, your back starts to, you feel your back, because you're holding this child right out here. Well, if you lift heavy weights from the ground with a bar and the bar is out in front of you because it can't go through you like the hex bar can, it's going to be a riskier move. I definitely straight bar deadlift. I see the benefit of progressing someone from a hex bar, which is primarily a lower body strengthener, into a straight bar deadlift and differentiating the two. We also deadlift with kettlebells. We can deadlift with 2 kettlebells. Any deadlift is just a movement coming off the floor. I think everyone should know how to deadlift. I don't think everyone should know how to snatch and throw that weight over your head. It's just incredibly risky. But clean movements up into your chest is also another good strategy for lifting heavy stuff. But let's dial it back a little bit and let's decrease some of the risk. Let's say that you haven't grown up lifting weights. Let's say you're starting to lift weights at 50 or 60. then some of your safest ways to get heavy loads and heavy tension into your body is going to come with a machine. And everybody loves to talk about functional training. We love to talk about mobility. We love to talk about balance, core strength, because none of those things really come into play when you're in a machine. But leg press is an excellent way to lift heavy stuff. A chest press in a machine is a very good way to lift heavy stuff. A pull exercise through a machine is an excellent, excellent exercise, because not everyone, I love straight bar Romanian deadlifts, one of my favorite exercises, but I have worked years on holding my posture in a really, really strong way. One of my second favorite exercises is going to be a bent over row. Not everyone can stay in that position for a long time without losing their spine, the integrity of their posture and the integrity of their spine. So machines are absolutely on the table, in play. They should be part of almost every athlete's routines. I just said that. And I'm a strength coach. I love complicated things. I love solving problems within the body, but machines absolutely have a place. Doesn't make a difference between runners and triathletes. I have some really, really accomplished runners on my roster of athletes. And I will tell you that Parker Stinson, when he runs, you will see he has shoulder muscles. How does that play for Parker as a professional runner? How does that play for any man who wants to run? It's going to give them this ability to have an upper body rotation that is strong and meaningful as it relates to the strength that they have built through training on their legs. And in some cases with runners and cyclists, I almost don't train their legs very much, especially when they need them to perform. So a deadlift for an Ironman athlete or for a 70.3 athlete or for a runner or a marathon runner should only be visited a few times in the competitive season. It's good to come back and get them under load a little bit, but they're loaded all the time. So we want to keep it in the game, but for triathletes and runners in season, if you're accomplishing your power outputs, you're racing well, you feel good, don't think you need to start lifting heavier and heavier weights when you're in season. Okay, so runners and triathletes both need upper body strength. Swimmers definitely get a lot of upper body strength when they're just through swimming. So if they're young athletes, I do work on presses and pulls, but a lot of times we're working on postural integrity and movement in space. Race week, that is a very, very big question. So that's one of our most asked questions. And I'm going to use the strength coach's biggest excuse. It depends. I hate to tell you, there is not one hard and fast answer on race week lifting. You either feel good and perform better because you lifted some weights, or you don't, and you prefer to rest and just swim, bike, run, and do your sport on race week. You've got to figure that out through your training diary. You've got to figure that out by really paying attention to some race simulation, and maybe even just do a full build week one, leading up to a really hard brick session or something on a Saturday. And for those of you that don't know what a brick session is, it's 2 events back to back. Stacy Sims talked about HIIT, lifting heavy, and plyometrics. Where would you incorporate HIIT and plyo into that schedule? The most important thing is HIIT training is interval training. So my interval day, and I believe most people's endurance athletes' interval days, you should have 2 interval days a week, maybe 3 if it's shorter. Tuesdays and Thursdays or Tuesdays and Fridays should be interval days. So you can always slip one in there, but HIIT isn't, if you do a class of HIIT, do it after your sport. If you're a non-athlete or non-competitive person just using the gym work and the lifting to be your sport is gym, then a HIIT class, a class when you're throwing med balls against the wall, or you're doing jumping jacks, or you're doing burpees, that would take the place of your track workout or your treadmill workout or your Zwift workout. Don't do it. I don't think you need it in conjunction with a really well thought out training program that is sport specific. So HIIT is HIIT, high intensity interval training. It's taxing, it's hard. If you're doing it right, you don't have time or energy to do a bike workout that's effective and then go to HIIT class at the gym. You're not doing it hard enough. When I talked to Stacy and I submitted my first proposal for series 1, she said, Erin, your rep ranges are off. And I'm going to talk about that in a sec. For Dr. Sims and what she's talking about, and she's not wrong. I agree with her 100%. True strength work is you max out at 4 to 5 reps. That means you can't do another repetition. Very few of us should put ourselves in that position, because once you get to that level of intensity and level of lifting, the risk goes up, but so does the reward. So it's worth the journey. It's worth that maybe in your 6th cycle, so maybe after 14 months of training, then you're finally finding out your true strength. I will train somebody sometimes for 6 to 8 months. They are working hard. They have no idea that I know we haven't even tapped into how strong they are. You have to be patient. You have to trust the process, and you kind of have to love the journey. So plyometrics, we're talking about elastic energy. So I always say when you load your middle finger and you hold it, you can feel tension in the fascia, and you just pull that back and you can feel it snap. Elastic energy is very energy inexpensive. It means it doesn't take a lot of nutrition to supply fuel for elastic energy. If you're a runner, if you're a cyclist, if you're a swimmer even, you want to have speed as part of your training program. Plyometrics in elastic energy are something that, again, high reward, but also high risk. So for me, I'll start with some very gentle agility drills, some footwork drills with people. So even just step left, step right, step left, step right, and you can actually start to move with a little bit of intensity and speed before you actually start trying to land and load and explode. It's dangerous, but it's fun once your tissue is ready to undergo some plyometrics. So your plyo day, so you could probably get off a hard bike session, lift some heavy stuff, and then incorporate some plyometric work on that day. And I would probably challenge most people to try and do the plyometrics before the bike, so that your riskiest movement is actually done first when you're freshest, if that's possible. It's not always possible with people's schedules, but if you had an open schedule and I could see you Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. for some mobility work in plyos, then send you off to go do a bike workout. And then after your bike workout, you would come back in and we'd lift some heavy stuff. That would be the perfect day. So doing plyometric training in a fatigued state is risky. I don't know that the reward is really necessarily there. Okay, time spent, 15 minutes, 45 or an hour, 15. Short and sharp. And I quote Dr. Sims on that. It should be short, it should be really, really effing hard, and it should be very, very sharp sessions like that. What about core work? Andrea, damn it, everything you do is core work. I do not know when planks were invented. I actually don't remember. Core work, a plank, we do very few of them. We are winning Ironman, and we are going to the Olympics with almost no planks. We are doing that with very, very little crunches. I don't like a lot of spinal flexion. I will do a lot more spinal extension if that's part of core work. Deadlifting is core work. Overhead presses are core work. Single leg stances are core work. Anytime you move and rotate is core work. I just started working with a wonderful athlete. He's one of the best in the world. He has a very rigid core. He cannot separate his upper back from his hips. And that has been something that we're really working on, getting some more mobility through his very rigid midsection. So you want to be able to move your upper body while stabilizing your lower body. So just remember, everything you do for the most part is core. It's not, if you're falling apart and your posture sucks, we're going to probably address that with some back exercises and some pulling exercises, not a bunch of planks. So planks will make you tired. It's kind of fun to play around with them sometimes, and at parties, see who can hold it the longest. But I'm not sure about that. Okay, so yeah, right? Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to keep going here. I've got a few more questions. Muscle strength. Let's talk really quick. I'm going to bring my pad back here. And let's talk really quickly about sets and reps. And Lindsay, yes, I will make sure that you guys get these outlines for real. Can you see it when I'm writing here? So if I wrote, let's see, if I write endurance like that, can you read that? Yes, we can. Jen, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go muscular endurance. And this is where we build tissue tolerance. We're also going to call this skill development. This is where you get good at the different movements that we're going to do. Endurance and skill development, we're going to have 15 to 20 reps with usually about 30 seconds of rest. And we're going to do, I'll put sets here. We're going to do 1 to 2 sets of 15 to 20 reps, 30 seconds. The result we get from that is tissue tolerance, tissue resiliency. The tendons, the muscle connections, the ligaments, they all get to move a lot, and they start to become resilient. They become more hydrated. Once we go from endurance, we're going to go into muscle hypertrophy. Hypertrophy for ectomorphs and endomorphs is very important. And we're going to do 2 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps. And we're going to rest approximately 90 seconds. No more than that, though. Hypertrophy, endurance is going to be less than 60% of our 1 rep max. Now, we stopped testing 1 rep max. You should feel, and I just call this light. This should feel light. Now, for hypertrophy, the weight gets a little bit heavier, and this elicits a change in muscle size. So somebody like me, I do a lot of muscle hypertrophy because I need to not lose muscle. I don't like to be super skinny. I like to be strong. So if you're an ectomeso or an ectomorph or an endomorph whose metabolism will be elevated by building muscle, you want to be fatigued at the 12th rep. That's a much lesser load than being fatigued at 5, right? So I'm going to go ahead and grab weights that I can fatigue right at 8 to 12 reps. If I can get 12, it's too light. If I cannot get to 8, it's too heavy. So I want to ideally fall within that rep range. The really important thing that most people miss out on in muscle hypertrophy is they rest too long. You need 90 seconds of rest. You're typically going before you're going to get muscle hypertrophy, you're going to get muscle growth. And as we age, we're losing muscle. So even a mesomorphic person, like somebody like Shelby, come back to you really quick. I would probably add more high intensity interval training, but I would keep the hypertrophy going, and we'd get you ripped by manipulating maybe your diet a little bit, as well as adding more interval training as long as it was safe for you. Once we go through muscle hypertrophy, then we can go into strength. And then we start getting into this rep range. We want to do sometimes 2, and I'm going to put 5, between 2 and 5 sets. And the reason I'm putting 5 is because we need a warm-up set. Sometimes it takes me 3 sets of deadlift to get someone into their heavy, heavy load. So don't be afraid in a strength set or in a strength phase that you're going to be doing the same thing maybe 6 times in a row. This is not entertainment, people. This is performance strength training, right? So 2 to 5 sets, and we're going to go anywhere from 3 to 5 or maybe 6 reps. And again, use this rule of thumb. If you can lift it 5 times and your little angel on your shoulder shows up and says, I don't think I can do another one, then you're right where you should be. If you can only get 3, then I would do 3, take off a little bit of weight, and then for the second set, and the rest period here is going to be 2 to 3 minutes. So this is so heavy that you actually need 2 to 3 minutes. And I'm going to challenge you to think about the fact I said 15 or 16 months to find out how strong you really are. In order to get someone 3 to 5 reps with a high enough skill development and confidence to lift that kind of load, that they actually sit down and they're sweating and they need 2 to 3 minutes, that happens very, very rarely because they're just raring to go. So I would be like, well, then it needs to be heavier, but your skill and your tissue development is not there. So you're not really realizing your true potential until you probably are pretty stoked for that 2-minute recovery. And then over here, we have power, but that's a whole nother conversation that we're not really going to get into right now. But power is about speed and rate of force production. And that is wonderful when your athletes get into the place where they're doing some power training and rate of force production and how quickly they can actually move load safely. But speed is a really interesting variable that can add in the potential for injury. And knock on wood, I've been a pretty blessed coach that my kids have been really safe and resilient over time. So there's the strength versus hypertrophy for Kate from the UK. Time and energy to lift heavy stuff. I'm currently doing 2 to 3 sessions per week on the bike. Hopefully you're getting an idea that lifting heavy stuff comes 3 times a year, not 3 times a week. Gordon got your answer there with your sets and reps. Asymmetries, right side, left side. Past injuries, I've broken my right ankle 3 times. I want to get you under load. I want you to do single leg exercises, but I don't necessarily think that loading up the weaker side and decreasing the load on the lighter side is a great strategy. So we want your brain, your brain is your central governor, makes all the decisions, keeps you safe, makes you strong, makes you the athlete that you are. And balance will come in time. Lindsay, one of my athletes is on the show today here. And yesterday, she's still in a knee brace. Just yesterday, we were just starting to recognize, or I was, the first time I had seen her since the surgery, was that she was standing like this and unloading this side. I broke this ankle 3 years ago. I still unload it because my brain remembers and got really familiar with unloading one side. So what I had Lindsay do was just kind of rock back and forth. And what happens is we start to make this deal with the brain. Oh, I'm okay over here. Oh, I'm okay over here. Oh, I'm okay over here. Now I'm going to stay here and I'm going to rotate into that side. And it's a very subtle movement, but this is a negotiation. Nobody wins by just saying, this is the way it's going to be, right? We're going to negotiate just a little bit. We're going to turn into it. And then we're going to get under load and heavy stuff. I like aggressive training. Don't get me wrong, but there's a time and a place for anything and everything. So right side, left side asymmetries can be really challenging. I met with a woman today who had a clavicle that was ununified, that she saw 3 doctors when she broke it 8 years ago. And they were all like, oh, it'll rejoin. It'll be fine. Well, it never rejoined. So her shoulder is just a little bit lower on that side. And using foundation training and some breath work, by the end of the hour, she could see in the mirror that she wasn't so dropped And so we elevated and we supported her shoulder and her clavicle with the rib cage and with breath work. So I love lifting heavy stuff. I'm a strength coach. I think it's beneficial, but I also recognize the power of working through the rib cage and the diaphragm and the muscles that we have within the body to support what happens on the outside. Rosalie asked a question about when your bench and your overhead pressing motions start to plateau. Well, I've been a strength coach for more than 20 years, and I understand what a female looks like bench pressing 35 pounds. I find that to be impressive. That's 35-pound dumbbells. I actually, at Rally Sport, I did purchase 37.5s for the exact reason she was describing, that I do think 35 to 40 is a really, really big jump. But I would also challenge Rosalie a little bit, like, what are you gonna do with a 40-pound dumbbell bench press that you can't do with a 35? I would manipulate speed of your lift. I might add a tempo. So if I were to start my dumbbell bench press up here and I went down for 1, hold for 1, push up for 1, I would call that tempo 1, 1, 1. Makes sense, right? Down 1, hold 1, push up for 1. That's way harder than 1, 0, 1. Down, up. That's 1, 0, 1. That has a stretch reflex. So for Rosalie, or for anybody that starts to plateau and thinks that the only way to make a lift harder is to add weight, then I would challenge you to start going 2, 1, 2. Down, 1, 2, hold, up, 1, 2. I would start to challenge the neuromuscular control of the lift rather than just start to add load. Because when you start adding load and you start bouncing off the bottom, or you start bouncing through joints that are more and more fragile as we age, it's not a great look. Your shoulders and your chest have no idea that you are lifting 35 pounds. They only know this is hard, this is hard, this is hard, this is hard. And then you put the weights away, you go eat your protein, and at night you go, we better start to get stronger because Rosalie wants to bench press. And so the result happens in the adaptive phase when you're not training it. And so all your tissue noticed was that was hard and I better adapt to get stronger. So maybe stop attaching some of the winning in the weight room, the win, to how much you're lifting, and really let's start shifting it to how we're lifting, and maybe pay attention to a little bit more of a tempo. All right, Steph Tiger had a great question about competitive cycling and competitive cyclists. Do they hurt their training if they switch out a HIIT session for a lift heavy session? Well, I'll tell you right now, Steph, I know who you are. I will promise you, you're getting more than enough HIIT training in your cycling training at this juncture. That might not be the case when you go into your off season, and that's when you can play with some of those other HIIT kind of classes, those kind of plyometric workouts, those kind of burpee things that you might like to do, or throw the ball around or anything like that. But right now, your system is getting taxed enough with interval training that you shouldn't switch out a lift heavy stuff for a HIIT session. If anything, I would probably, leading into nationals, I would take away some of your heavy lifting, and I might even add some challenges on the bike, because that is sport specific training that wants, and if you're training for nationals, you desire to do well. You're a competitor. So I want you to do most of your hard sessions on the bike. That's just me. Okay, we've got a few more questions here. And if there's anything that you guys are thinking about, we're going to wind this up really quick. Massimo, in Italy, I talked about periodization across the year. I talked about that. That's a huge topic. We could talk for hours about that together for sure. Lifting heavy stuff with minimal equipment and the home gym. That was important to me to talk to you today. Think 1, 2, and 3. 1 is light, 2 is moderate, and 3 is heavy. A lot of my group that plays with me each week on these workouts with ECFIT, they have now got a 4. They didn't have a 4 before. They've moved forward in a year. They need a heavier set of weights. And my guess is we might even need a 5 as we go into the off season. 1 is an easy or lightweight. If I were to show you through bands, I've got long bands. This is my number 1 band. It's very, very light, very springy. This is my number 2 band. It's harder than the 1 band. And then number 3, I don't really even use it. It's the red band. It might be holding up a plant or something. I think it was last week. Where's my number 3 band? Yeah, seriously, like people steal my number 3 band and I don't even notice it because I don't use it. My number 1 dumbbell is going to be a 5-pound dumbbell. I'm lucky I also have a 7.5. So that's my number 1 set of dumbbells. Number 2 is 15 to 20, depending on how I'm training. If I've done a lot of swimming, I do the 15s, not the 20s. My number 3 dumbbell is usually 25 to 35 pounds. So your home gym optimally would have a 1, 2, and a 3 band, long band, a 1, 2, and a 3 set of dumbbells or kettlebells. I love kettlebells. The hex bar is kind of a bonus for sure. And then I also really love, and a lot of my audience and a lot of my friends have Vipers. And Vipers are just a weighted tube that allows for loaded movement training, and we train with power a little bit with our Viper training. So your home gym heavy stuff, yeah, you kind of have to make a little bit of an investment. I mean, some people have seen me do workouts when I'm on vacation with rocks. I don't think rocks are bad. I think they're great. They're heavy. So take rocks, put them in an old duffel bag. That will give you heavy things to lift. But again, you don't just need to lift it. You need to lift it with postural integrity. You need to lift it with engaged lower body. So home gym adaptation and finding ways. People use tires. People use old things, paint cans. I've used Pellegrino bottles for shoulder raises. I think you can get pretty creative and find ways to build a home gym that really works for you. Still cheaper than the treadmill. You know it, Doc Helma. So that's your home gym stuff. Translating, Bob Adams, I actually talked to your coach, Bob, if you do watch this. I talked to Tracy about this. Your height, your weight, what you're able to back squat, your experience lifting weights. I actually asked Tracy if it was okay if I told you to stop lifting for 3 weeks and really focus on that bike power and your sprinting. So yes, sometimes lifting weights can get in the way of bike performance. Lifting weights can get in the way of run performance. A lot of different things. If you have this little breakthrough that you're trying to achieve, I want you to do foundation training and launch workouts. Very simple, low-level stuff. And put all of your energy and all of your time that you have energy into your sport. It is really, really, really important. And then the pre-flight sessions that I provide help put your pelvis in the right position, help lock open your posture in the upper body. So for Bob, translating heavy lifting, they have done studies. Increasing your ability to have lower body strength will in fact make you a better cyclist, but probably not to the extent that you are performing. You're a very high level athlete, and therefore you don't need to deadlift more to go from 1,000 to 1,200 watts. You need to ride your bike harder. So that's probably pretty important. When to do your lifting, if your cycling is important and your running is important, then you're lifting after. If it's not, and you're just doing this for fitness, lean and happy and healthy, you can mix up the order. Mixing it up is probably the best plan you could do. Your body loves variability. Predictability with the body can become very boring for your body. If you want adaptation, you want to have a very systematic ability to revisit lines of pull without exhausting lines of pull and making your body be bored by it. So changing things up, but staying in the same genre is probably important. It's here Friday night. Think about drinking white wine, but drinking different white wines on Friday night. With a double session for triathlon training, when should you add in strength? Sky, that's a great question. So if typically for time and energy, if you have a swim first, swim and gym is pretty good. And then you're going to do a run or a cycle later, you're probably going to be just fine with that, with a few hours in between. The intent of a double session day is really that you tax your body to the extent that you get a great adaptation. So if you add gym in after the first session, most of my athletes would want to add in their gym session and their lift after their first aerobic session or anaerobic session or sports session. So swim and gym, and then they go ride, or bike and gym, and then they might go for a run later in the day. So that's how we would split it up for triathlon. In January, when there's very little racing, we sometimes will put gym first. I don't like that much for most of my athletes. I want them to focus on their sport, and I don't mind having them come to me a little bit tired. Okay, taper week. I did address that really quick. I'll hit it one more time. Taper week, it depends. It depends who you are. You want to create a story within yourself so you understand how your body reacts for a great Saturday session with maybe a lift on Tuesday or Wednesday. I definitely would not lift any weights on Thursday or Friday, but I would definitely do a recovery session with Doc Helma, with foundation training, or even an active session. If you're fit enough to do any kind of racing, you're fit enough to recover and reap the benefits from a beautiful session of foundation training on Thursday or Friday for a Saturday race. Okay, so we're sitting here at 5:17. That's kind of my limit. I was going to go just, oh, there's Bob. Hi, Bob. I would really like to say thank you. This has been just an honor that so many people stepped up and wanted to play strength training. I am here. I'm a great resource. I think I'm pretty humble. I bring in resources and smarter people than me if we need help. You're welcome to reach out to me, Erin at ECFIT Boulder. If you have a specific question about foundation training, or you want to have a question about injuries and whatnot, we want to bring in Doc Helma. Happy to do that as well. So have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. Be kind. Be really, really good to people. And we're just all going to make this place a better world to be in. Okay. We're going to be here a while. We want to be strong. Stronger is better.